You're listening to Speaking Of by WFSU Public Media. This week is the 1-year anniversary of Speaking Of, and we are celebrating our birthday by listening back to some of our audience's favorite segments. Also, Gina Jordan sits down with our Director of Content, Lynn Hatter, to chat about the beginnings and evolution of the radio hour. You will also hear snippets of some of our most popular episodes, including Hurricane Preparedness, Immigration Raids, and Juneteenth.
Hi, I'm Gina Jordan, Morning Edition host at WFSU, and today we are speaking of the first anniversary of Speaking Of. Yay! Yay us!
Happy birthday, Speaking Of.
Yes! It's been a year since we launched our show, which is also comprised of 3 podcasts. We'll hear snippets of some of our most listened to episodes, but first, WFSU Director of Content Lynn Hatter joins me. Welcome, Lynn.
Hey, G. So what are we speaking of today?
Well,
I know that's like my signature catchphrase.
It is, and you're so good at it. So you were one of the masterminds of this show. This was your baby.
It is alleged, yes. It is alleged.
Well, so it seemed reasonable to ask you how we got here. How did this happen?
Oh, man. This show was born out of a bit of a WFSU disagreement over the future of our sound. Interestingly enough, most of our listeners will remember Perspectives, our long-standing weekly affairs program, and we had noticed that the show was sounding maybe not how we wanted it to sound. And we started really grappling as an organization with the question of, well, what comes next? And it got a little heated. There were some words and a bit of a tug of war, but ultimately we made the really tough decision to let Perspectives retire. Mm-hmm. And we knew when we finally made that choice that we would face some backlash to it. And in fact, yes, a lot of people noticed immediately that Perspectives was no longer on air. And we started getting questions about, well, what are you doing? Well, where's Perspectives? Or, oh, I really miss Perspectives. And we did too. But what it did was it gave us the opportunity, I think, to really kind of go back to the drawing board and reimagine kind of the child of Perspectives, right? To look at Perspectives' legacy and really think about what would that show be? Who would that show serve? And what would that show sound like? Ultimately, that's how we came up with Speaking Of.
Yeah, and this show itself has evolved over the last year. I think it's hit a good stride.
I think so. You know, it's really tough to sort of let go of something that you poured so much time and tears and frustration and more time and kind of let somebody else take it over. Myself and Trisha Moynihan, our former director of digital, shout out to Trish. We love you.
Yay, Trish.
You know, we spent a heck of a lot of time developing Speaking Of. I think sometimes people think that you just have an idea for a show and you throw it together and you let it fly. And that's not actually how. It took us about a good year to really take it back to the drawing board. We did probably 60 one-on-one interviews with different people, asking them, hey, we want to do a new show. What do you think it should have? How do you think it should sound? What should we include? And we got a ton of feedback. I don't know if we still have some of those early drafts of Speaking Of, but one of my favorite that will never be a show, but was a fun concept, was killing cactuses and Antonio Brown losing his jeans.
Oh, I remember that.
I think we might have an excerpt from it.
Yes, right here.
So the former Buccaneers wide receiver was in town. For those who do not know, Brown has now launched a rap career and apparently was doing a concert here at Potbelly's. Well, according to some social media videos out of Barstool, after the concert, Brown took off his pants and threw them to the crowd.
What the
So yeah, that was an early concept. You can probably hear how the show has grown since then, but it took a lot of time, a lot of planning, and a lot of work, not just from the people here at WFSU, but really all of the people who listened to those early takes, who offered us feedback, who were willing to take the time and let us interview them one-on-one to really kind of pinpoint that question of what is this show? What do people want of it? Who does it serve? And how does it address the big things that are driving the conversations we're having here locally?
Yeah. Well, you definitely did a lot of work on this. It was absolutely a deep dive to get here. Final thoughts that you'd like our listeners to know about this?
You know, if you have something to say, an idea for a show, feel free to give us a call. We're here to listen.
We are. WFSU Director of Content, Lynn Hatter. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina.
Now let's hear some snippets from our most listened to segments of the show this year. We start with Hurricane Prep, and that segment was hosted by Regan McCarthy.
I turned to Leon County Director of Community Relations and Resilience, Matt Cavell, and County Division of Emergency Management Director Kevin Peters to get some answers about what to expect and how to prepare for this year's potential storms.
I know that we've had some severe weather outbreaks just this spring. The forecasts have been provided, all of the outlooks, and we've not seen From our perspective, we've not seen a degradation in the services our local office provides. They are still doing all of the things that they've always done, and we anticipate that to continue through all of hurricane season.
And I do want to return to the point that you had brought up, Regan, which was that there was a NOAA weather radio alert failure. I also want to acknowledge and thank NOAA and National Weather Service for being transparent about that and for coming forward and saying, please get your information on weather alerts from all other available sources. That level of transparency is very important, and it allowed us at Leon County to be able to, again, re-inform folks, to be able to tell them to get your weather alerts again from local sources, from web services, from mobile apps, to all the other things in which you may receive your alerts, to continue to receive them in multiple different ways. So again, acknowledgement to, yes, the NOAA weather radio had failed. National Weather Service was very transparent about that and worked with partners to ensure that everyone had every possible way to receive alerts going forward in the season. But again, it just goes back to that core message, which we say all the time, is no one has been communicated with too much during a disaster, either from programs like this or from our local partners that we work with. There's nothing is too much when it comes to disaster. So again, we appreciate all the folks that make that happen.
Right. And I think that goes back to the messaging that I've heard a lot, which is that during an emergency or as any kind of weather approaches, a person should have more than one way to get alerts.
Yes, you should have every possible way in which you can get alerts, and you should encourage your friends, family, neighbors, and others to also have the same way in which reaching folks. So, for instance, a radio service may go down, a weather app might not work as intended, or you may not have consistent access to electricity, so you should know which radio station to tune into. There are a lot of different ways that disaster will challenge you and the way in which you receive alerts, and you need to be ready to tune into all of them as often as possible to keep yourself informed.
Mm-hmm. I think what some of these last questions I've been asking you really highlight is a general sense of anxiety and maybe loss of trust in some of these big government groups that we count on. Maybe a loss of trust in FEMA or NOAA or even local government. What can you be doing to address that?
So the biggest thing I'll say before I turn it over to Kevin is at the local level, we live here. We live on the roads that we clear trees from. We go to the parks and the community events, which all of these folks in our community also go to. We are absolutely committed at every level to serve our community, to return us to normal as quick as possible, and to ensure, again, as the strongest advocate possible, to get every state and federal resource available for folks here. Again, as we've stressed, the federal partners at the federal level and the state level have been professional. They've been well educated for all these years. They've been committed to service. And right now, we don't have indications that anything would be different than that. So we're going to lean into that when it comes to the community that we live in and we serve, to ensure that everyone gets everything that they possibly need and deserve to recover. But Kevin, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, just to reemphasize, Matt's point. This is our community. We live here, and we're part of the professional network that helps keep people safe. And we're going to always do the most professional level work we can to advocate for our community.
Mm-hmm. My last question that I have for you is that I'm hearing from people who are saying, I'm not ready for a hurricane season. I'm still recovering. Maybe I'm still recovering here in Tallahassee from those tornadoes that came about a year ago and knocked a big hole in my roof. Or, maybe some people are still recovering from even Hurricane Michael 7 years ago. What resources, what help is out there for people who feel like they're still in this recovery mode? They're not ready to prepare for another storm season.
So the first thing that we would say to them is, we hear you. So we also understand that, both from our lived experience here in the community and also from our response, which again spools up weeks prior to a storm and continues weeks after a storm, often months. We see that, and we understand that there is a level of anxiety and, to be honest with you, trauma that folks have had to experience from the past storm, which brought to some of your listeners from Helene and Debbie and the May 10th tornadoes significant emotional and financial burdens. We would always encourage folks to call 211 Big Bend in this region. They can help with those wraparound services, social services.
Moving from hurricane preparedness to immigration. A lot of you tuned into our discussion about the immigration raids in Tallahassee in late May. We're hearing the sound of a protest rally at the Capitol last week. That was a day after 100 or so people were detained around Tallahassee. You may have seen pictures of them lined up wearing zip-tie handcuffs. Many of them were pulled from a large construction site along Gaines Street across from Doak Campbell Stadium. I'm joined now by WFSU Interim News Director Regan McCarthy. Regan, you drove by that scene of people being lined up to board buses.
I did, yes. So actually earlier in the day, I'd seen some images or some videos of sort of ICE activities. It looked like some people who maybe were undocumented were being arrested. Then later in the day, I drove by the area where it seemed like some of these arrests were happening, and I really became aware of the large scale of what was happening. Mm-hmm. There were what looked like old school buses ready to take people away, lines of people, lots of police activity.
Yeah.
We know that at least 100 people were detained.
Yeah. So you saw that, and then you heard about this rally that was happening at the Capitol the next day.
Right. I saw that on social media as well, and went there. It was happening Friday evening, and there were, I would say, more than 100 people there, a pretty big turnout on such short notice. Lots of people were there who either had parents who were immigrants themselves, and have a lot of concern about how these deportation efforts are being carried out right now.
So you talked to some of these folks that actually they're fine. They generally don't have anything to worry about, but they're there to support their family members or to support people they don't know who are in this situation.
Yeah. One person I talked to is named Ilya Litvak. He was at the protest, and he actually told me he got his citizenship a year ago. And so he personally is not really concerned about his safety, whether he might be deported, but he is concerned about what could happen to other people.
So if I were not a citizen, I wouldn't have come here. That would be dangerous, right? In light of the recent detentions and deportations, that is very dangerous, yes. And so if you put so much, of your life, and not just effort, but it's a big chunk of your life into building a life here, building a career, and then contributing to, to science or to economy, like everyone's situation is different, but contributing, right? We're not just building our lives, right? We're building the country, right? This way or that way, we are building the country, no matter our status. And so, of course, there would be way more people here if they were not essentially afraid.
That's a good point. potentially it could have been a larger protest, but why would someone go there if there's any chance that they're going to be arrested?
Right, exactly. And so the fact that Litvak has his citizenship, I think gave him that safety that he felt like he could go. And I should say, Litvak, he's from Russia. He's been in the country for about 20 years now. He went to grad school, and he's been living in Tallahassee for 11 years. He works here at the Mag Lab. So I think his situation made him feel secure to come. But I think that people who maybe don't have citizenship are still moving through the process, don't feel as able to maybe make their voices heard in these situations.
I want to say I'm no judge to people who either cross the border without documents or come legally and then overstay, because I had the opportunity to do it the proper way, which also gave me an opportunity to build a career.
So another thing about Litvak is he's white, and so he feels like that gives him a sense of privilege here as well. He's not easily identifiable walking down the street as someone that might be racially profiled, as people are talking about could be happening in some of these deportation efforts. He feels like that gives him a sense of security, and also he feels like he is viewed by some people differently as an immigrant. He thinks there might be the expectation that he has more education or that he's a different kind of immigrant, and he believes that's also part of what gives him this ability to speak out, and that's what makes him want to be at events like this, to stand up for others who he thinks don't have that same privilege.
Leaving the immigration conversation, finally, here is an excerpt from a more recent segment that got a lot of ears, Juneteenth. While May 20th is the date Florida's enslaved people heard they were free, it took another month until June 19th for the message to reach Texas. Today we're getting a history lesson and some analysis from two local historians and scholars. We start with Dr. Andrea Oliver, a professor of history at Tallahassee State College and a member of the WFSU Community Advisory Board.
I think that it is important to recognize the specific day that enslaved Floridians received their freedom, which was May 20th of 1865. Now, in terms of recognizing Juneteenth, I do think that that is important because it is a reflection of a very important principle, a principle that states that until all of us are free, none of us are free.
Okay, so now that we have these Juneteenth recognitions, how have these kind of observances evolved, would you say, in Florida and around the country as far as people understanding Juneteenth and honoring it?
If nothing else, it has raised awareness, appreciation, and just in general knowledge about slavery, what it has meant to this country, the role that it played in this country's development, the fact that you have members of the African American community now able to share the history behind why there was even a Juneteenth in the first place. I like to think of it as America's true Independence Day. Until all of us are free, none of us are. Considering that at the time of July 4th, 1776, 25% of the American population was held in bondage, and slavery was legal under the banner of the American flag at that time. To come full circle 87 years later and have in 1865 a true revolution resulting in true freedom and true liberation and the ending of human bondage within our borders. I don't think that we can really overstate how significant that really is.
Thank you to TSC history professor Andrea Oliver for those words of wisdom. Now we get some analysis from Dr. Tiffany Packer from Florida A&M University. She is an associate professor and department chair of history, political science, geography, and African American studies at FAMU. What is your ideal day to mark Juneteenth?
Ooh, my ideal day is probably, it's so full, right? So full. It would be filled with some sort of festivals, which would include gospel music. It would include African dancing. It would include workshops around community building. But guess what? It would also include eating red velvet cake.
Well,
it would
that's
include
that
red
sounds
Kool-Aid.
good. I support that.
Because, red is such a symbolic color for Juneteenth because it represents the blood of the people, the bloodshed of those that, sacrificed their life for the ultimate gift of freedom. So people tend to eat and prepare red things or wear red things,
Yeah.
right? To commemorate Juneteenth. So that's what it would look like.
Nice. Yeah. Let's describe your outfit.
So I have on a red shirt and red pants with a blue blazer, and I have on my white pearls.
Very nice.
So I tend to like to wear these colors intentionally during the week of Juneteenth because they're actually two different flags that are often used around this time. But the Juneteenth flag is one that was adopted around the late 80s, where it's red, blue, and white, the same colors of the American flag, and it has one star in the middle that looks like it's bursting, right? And so the idea is that now this particular population, formerly enslaved population, are understanding themselves as people, citizens in this country. And they are representing the bursting star, which is now so symbolic of their independence. So it is a Juneteenth flag, but one that tends to be associated with Texas. But of course, we carry it countrywide.
Yeah. Well, since you brought it up, we do have Independence Day coming up.
We do.
And as America commemorates that with the Declaration of Independence, can you offer some perspective on how Juneteenth relates to the 4th of July?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. I love this question. July 4th, even though it's associated with 1776, the concept around it was independence, of course. And even though slavery will continue after that's over, even get harder after that's over, there were Black soldiers who fought on behalf of the Patriot Army because they understood the power of independence even then. And their role in that American Revolution will continue to plant seeds of freedom that will come over time. And it is also a reminder that when you're pushing and fighting for freedom, that you have to lock your knees. It is not instant. It's not instant gratification. Sometimes it's a seed that you plant that you may not reap the benefits of during your lifetime.
And that wraps up this Best Of segment. All past episodes and full shows of Speaking Of can be found at WFSU.org and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Gina Jordan.